Welcome to this explainer. Look, today I am stepping right into the role of your personal life coach. We're going to take some, honestly, incredibly powerful psychological theories about emotional regulation, and we're turning the whole shebang into a highly actionable 7-day schedule, something you can literally start using right this minute. Okay, let's dive into this. Now, I want you to really think about that for a second. We've all said things like, man, they really know how to push my buttons, right? Kind of acting like we're just helpless remote controls. But here's the truth. Nobody has magical powers over your emotions. That's what we call the button pusher myth. People actually can't push buttons you don't give them. And those buttons, they're really just unhealed wounds or, values violations from your past. So when a difficult person triggers you, they aren't actually controlling you. They're just revealing exactly where you still need a little healing. And the neurology absolutely backs this up. When something triggers you, the stress chemicals that create that initial hot flush of anger, they naturally dissipate from your system in exactly 90 seconds. That is it. Literally 90 seconds. So if you're still angry 20 minutes later, well, it's because you made the choice to keep feeding the fire by rehearsing the story or planning your perfect comeback in your head. It's kind of like having a smoke alarm go off from burning toast, and instead of just opening a window, you keep making more toast. So over the next week, we're going to break down this complex psychology into small, manageable daily habits. Here's our coaching syllabus. First, the intake session. Then, days 1 and 2, mapping triggers. Days 3 and 4, reframing the story. Days 5 and 6, scripts for boundaries. And finally, day 7, the daily reflection. Section 1, the intake session. Before we officially hit day 1 of the schedule, we need a foundational concept to ground us. Between trigger and response, there's a space. In that space lies your freedom. Now, Viktor Frankl hit the nail on the head here. This quote perfectly captures what we call the choice point. It's that tiny microsecond right after the trigger hits and your body floods with chemicals, but right before you actually react. In that microsecond, you get to decide. Are you going to be a helpless pinball just bouncing off whatever happens to you? Or are you going to be the player controlling the game? Finding that space, that is your emotional superpower. Section 2, days 1 and 2, mapping triggers. All right, let's officially kick off the boot camp. These first 2 days are all about building your internal awareness. Your exact exercise for day 1 is to activate what we call the observer self. So instead of saying, I am angry, which if you think about it, makes you actually become the emotion, I want you to practice saying, I notice irritation rising. See the difference? By just observing the emotion like it's a passing weather pattern, you don't get hijacked by it. It builds this incredible emotional immunity. You can experience the feeling without letting it totally dictate your actions. Moving to day 2, we implement the trigger map method. You're going to want to keep a simple journal for this. When that trigger hits at T0, watch the clock. Over the 90 seconds, just note exactly who was involved, what was said, and ask yourself what past wound this echoes. Maybe you'll realize, oh wow, I actually have a real fear of authority figures. Or maybe someone's sarcasm reminds you of a past rejection. By actively recording these specific steps, you start to see the pattern. And once you see the emotional landmine well, you can proactively step around it instead of stepping right on it. Section 3, days 3 and 4, reframing the story. Great progress so far. Now we're hitting our midweek focus. For day 3, we really need to look at secondary emotions, because a lot of the time what you call anger isn't actually anger. Anger is just the security guard. It shows up to protect much more vulnerable feelings like hurt or fear or shame. When you shift from that reactive mind that just yells, you never remember anything, to the coached mind that addresses the actual underlying hurt by saying, I felt forgotten, a massive shift happens. Vulnerability heals, whereas anger, it just creates more distance. Then, on day 4, you're going to practice the story stopper habit. Look, you aren't experiencing reality, you're experiencing your story about reality. Say your boss sends a curt email. Story 1 in your head might be, they hate my work and want to fire me, which obviously leads to immediate anxiety and defensiveness, right? But what if you deliberately reframe it to story 2? Actually, they're just super busy and want to help me improve quickly. Suddenly, you feel curiosity, maybe even gratitude. We're reframing difficult people to view them as our emotional personal trainers. They aren't obstacles. They're the exact people helping you build those resilience muscles. Section 4, days 5 and 6, scripts for boundaries. Okay, so our internal mindset is right. Now we need to take some protective action out in the real world. For day 5, we use healthy boundaries to let the good things in and keep the harmful things out. Practicing compassionate distance is absolutely key here. If someone is venting or acting out, you need a quick script ready to go. You might say, I understand you're frustrated, but I don't respond well to yelling. Can we talk when you're calmer? Or maybe, I care about you, but I can only listen to this for 5 minutes, and Leslie brainstorms solutions. Think of yourself like a lifeguard. You can care about someone, you can absolutely throw them a life preserver, but you cannot jump in and drown with them. Use these exact scripts to protect your peace while still being highly supportive. Now, day 6 is your timeout protocol. Knowing when to step back is totally crucial. Seriously, a strategic retreat is a sign of wisdom, not weakness. When you notice your nervous system flooding with those stress chemicals, just state your script directly. I need to take a break from this conversation. Taking just a 5-minute break allows your brain's prefrontal cortex to literally come back online. And trust me, it will save you hours of messy, painful cleanup conversations later. Section 5, Day 7, the Daily Reflection. And just like that, we arrive at the final day of the boot camp. This is where we lock it all in, because as we know, knowledge without practice is really just entertainment. To make this stick, you need a daily reflection template. For day 7, and ideally, every day after, I want you to fill this out every single evening. Track the trigger, identify the vulnerable emotion hiding underneath it, catch that false story you told yourself, and then log your new observer-based response. For example, if your trigger was a colleague's sarcasm, the underlying emotion might actually be a fear of inadequacy. The story you told yourself was, they disrespect me, but your new response is simply, I notice irritation rising. Tracking this maps your personal growth right before your very eyes. It's a real game changer. As we wrap up this boot camp, please remember, integration happens through consistent practice, not perfection. Choosing a new response just one single time begins rewiring your brain. So start with just one technique. Give it a week. Small, consistent changes create absolutely massive transformations over time. You are replacing those automatic, knee-jerk reactions with intentional, grounded responses. And I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought for our explainer today. Who will you be when difficult people no longer have power over your peace? The person who never gets bothered? They weren't born different. They just practiced these exact skills until they became automatic. Think about it. The calm, totally unbothered version of yourself is waiting for you right on the other side of this 7-day schedule. You've got the roadmap. Now it's time to take the journey.